If you do this to a narcissist, they will eventually become your slave. There's a moment one you don't always see coming when the tables silently turn. A moment when the person who used to control you, manipulate your emotions and feed off your insecurities, suddenly becomes obsessed, confused, and increasingly desperate to get back the upper hand. But here's the catch. They no longer hold the strings. You do. And you didn't get there through manipulation or cruelty. You didn't get there by stooping to their level or fighting fire with fire. You got there by doing something so counterintuitive, so simple, yet so transformative, that the narcissist had no defense against it. Because when you stop playing their game, they lose control. When you start moving with clarity instead of chaos, they become reactive. And when you start protecting your peace instead of explaining your pain, they start circling you like a moth to a flame, drawn but never in control again. In this video, we're going to explore the deep psychology behind this shift. We'll look at how narcissists, driven by their need to dominate and extract emotional energy, can become psychologically entangled with someone they once underestimated, simply because that person learned to stop feeding them. If you do this one thing, applied consistently, it's not just that the narcissist loses power over you, it's that they become emotionally dependent on trying to get it back. They start reacting. They start chasing. They start mimicking servitude, not out of love, but out of desperation. And in many cases, they become like a slave to your emotional silence. But the story doesn't end there. Because this illusion of servitude never lasts forever. There's always an until they can reassert control. Until they can sabotage your growth. Until they can lure you back into the game. This is a dangerous shift, but it's one you can navigate powerfully, as long as you understand why it happens, how it unfolds, and what to watch for. So in this voiceover from the lens of a clinical psychologist, I'll walk you through exactly what this thing is, how it impacts a narcissist, and how to maintain your inner power in the aftermath. Let's begin. Detailed discussion. Psychological insight. Easy to understand. So what is this that changes everything? It's not rage. It's not revenge. It's not even no contact on its own. It's emotional detachment rooted in clarity. The moment you stop emotionally reacting to a narcissist is the moment their power over you begins to crumble. Let me explain. Narcissists thrive in emotionally reactive environments. That's not just a theory, it's a clinical reality. In many cases, individuals with narcissistic traits are wired to seek out situations that reinforce their superiority, centrality, and control. They rely on your emotional feedback to affirm their identity. So when you cry, plead, justify, argue, defend, or try to explain your truth to them, they feel empowered. Even if you're screaming, even if you're in pain, your emotion is proof that they matter. It means you still care, and to a narcissist, care equals control. But when you stop reacting, not by faking indifference, but by truly letting go of the need to convince them, change them, or win them back, they don't feel powerful, they feel rejected. And rejection, to a narcissist, is excruciating. Because they can't metabolize it, they can't process it. It doesn't just bruise their ego, it threatens the entire illusion they've built about who they are, and they panic. Now let's go deeper. Here are the first 3 things that happen when you truly detach from a narcissist emotionally, and why it makes them behave like a slave to your absence until they can't take it anymore. You stop responding to the bait, and their world starts to fracture. Narcissists throw emotional bait constantly. They'll criticize you, triangulate with others, create false emergencies, or disappear just long enough for you to come chasing. When you stop reacting to these provocations, not with spite but with non-engagement, you're sending a powerful message. You don't own my attention anymore. This breaks their emotional ecosystem. Their entire identity is built on knowing they can push your buttons, summon you with silence, or draw you in with guilt. But now, there's no fuel, no reaction, no emotional response. They begin to panic, not because they love you, but because they've lost their grip. Your silence makes them chase a role they used to control. When you detach, The narcissist doesn't just lose a supply source. They lose the story they've written for themselves. You see, they often cast themselves as the one who's in charge of the relationship narrative. Whether they left or discarded you, they assumed they could return any time, or that you'd always need closure, approval, or attention. But your clarity disrupts that fantasy. You're not arguing with them. You're not asking for anything. You're simply gone, emotionally and psychologically. And so, they start showing up in ways that resemble loyalty, servitude, or obsession. They text, they apologize, they remember your birthday, they pretend to care, they offer gifts, they say things like, "I've been thinking about you," or "I didn't appreciate you back then." It's not genuine. It's not a change of heart. It's an attempt to re-enter the cycle. They aren't enslaved out of love. They're addicted to the idea of restoring control. 3. They start mirroring you again, but with a hint of desperation. In the early stages of your relationship with a narcissist, they probably mirrored you, your language, interests, dreams. That's how they got close in the first place. But after detachment, after you stop emotionally investing, they try to mirror again, but this time, it's hollow. It's forced. You can sense the desperation. They want to sound spiritual, because you've found healing. They want to look healed, because you're no longer broken. They try to sound empathetic, but it's just repetition of things they've heard from you or read online. They're attempting to become the person they think you'll engage with again, but they can't hold it up for long. It's a mask built on borrowed light, and the truth always cracks through. By now, you understand the early psychological shift that happens when you stop emotionally reacting to a narcissist. That shift feels subtle at first, but to them, it's catastrophic. You've interrupted the supply line. You've disrupted their emotional illusion. And more importantly, you've reclaimed yourself. But here's the truth most people don't talk about. Just because the narcissist starts chasing you doesn't mean you've won. Just because they become attached doesn't mean they've healed. And just because they appear to serve you doesn't mean they've surrendered their ego. In fact, many narcissists become more dangerous during this phase because they feel humiliated, and their desire to regain power doesn't disappear, it just mutates. So what happens next? Let's explore the next stages that often unfold when the narcissist begins acting like a servant to your absence. It may look like submission, but beneath the surface the same hunger remains. 4. They begin love bombing again, but this time it's tailored to your healing. In the beginning, the narcissist mirrored who you were. They became the ideal partner, friend, or family member you wanted based on your unmet needs and emotional wounds. But after detachment, they try to love bomb who you've become. They study your healing. They read what you read. They follow the same accounts. They talk about boundaries, emotional growth, therapy. They want to seem like they've changed because your approval now represents the power they've lost. But this version of love bombing is even more dangerous. It's built on your evolution, and it's designed to make you question whether they've finally gotten it. They haven't. They've just upgraded the costume. This is not growth. It's emotional mimicry with a survival agenda. 5. They apologize profusely, but only to reopen the door. A true apology is grounded in empathy, accountability, and a willingness to repair. But narcissistic apologies are strategic. They say sorry not because they understand your pain, but because they want access again. They use phrases like, "I didn't know better back then. You meant everything to me and I ruined it. I've changed. Please give me a chance to show you." These words can feel powerful, especially if you've been gaslit into believing the problem was always you. But behind the curtain, their motivation isn't closure. It's control. Their sorry is bait, a hook disguised as humility. And once you re-engage, they slowly begin flipping the script, making you question your boundaries, reinterpreting history, or hinting that you owe them another chance. 6. They become over-attentive, and you feel like the one in power. Here's where it gets complicated. For a while, the narcissist truly does begin to serve you. They text first. They show up. They compliment you. They seem emotionally available. You're no longer chasing them. You're no longer questioning your worth. It feels like the scales have tipped. But this phase is often an illusion. What's really happening is a form of reverse grooming. They're conditioning you to trust them again while collecting data on your new boundaries, triggers, and fears. In many cases, narcissists pretend to serve until they feel they've earned enough trust to re-establish dominance. That's the until your guard is down, until you feel safe again, until they find the crack in your new identity and begin chipping away. They overcompensate in public and begin painting themselves as the good guy. While they're serving you behind the scenes, they're also managing their image in front of others. They post about healing, emotional growth, or self-awareness. They talk about how much they've learned from the relationship. They may even position you as the one who left them behind. Why? Because narcissists are always future-proofing their story. They want to look good, no matter what happens. And if you reject them again, they want a public safety net. A narrative that says, I tried, I changed, but they didn't give me a chance. This dual image, the servant to you, the saint to others, is part of their long-game strategy. If they can't win your heart back, they'll try to win your reputation. 8. They develop obsessive behavior masked as loyalty. This is where the emotional slavery becomes most apparent and most deceptive. They text constantly. They check in. They ask how you're feeling. They offer to help. They compliment your strength, your wisdom, your growth. It looks like devotion, but it's often obsession. They're fixated on regaining their place in your life. Not because they value you as a person, but because they can't tolerate being the one discarded. Remember, narcissists discard others. They are not supposed to be discarded themselves. So when you truly detach, it doesn't just bruise their ego, it creates an identity crisis. And their obsessive attention isn't love. It's a trauma response, a desperate attempt to reverse roles and restore emotional control. By this point in the narcissist's unraveling, they've gone from acting cold and superior to desperate and overly devoted. And to the untrained eye, this might look like growth, like change, like redemption. But if you look closer beneath the new words behind the softer tone, you'll see something else. What you'll see is not a person awakening to empathy, but a person reeling from rejection. What you'll see is not the beginning of emotional healing, but the final desperate act to regain supply. Because when you emotionally detach from a narcissist, they may start behaving like a servant, like someone devoted to you, hanging on your words, endlessly attentive to your moods and needs. But make no mistake, this is not love, this is strategy. And when that strategy doesn't work, when they realize their manipulation no longer has power, when even their obedience doesn't bring them back into your orbit, that's when the mask falls completely. And this next phase is perhaps the most dangerous of all. Let's explore it. 9. They begin undermining you from the shadows. Once the narcissist sees that their charm, gifts, apologies, and emotional mimicry no longer influence you, they often move from servant to saboteur. But instead of confronting you directly, they'll start operating behind the scenes. They'll reach out to mutual contacts. They'll subtly imply you've changed for the worse. They might say, I still care about them, but they've become cold, closed off, paranoid. This is classic image defense. They can't stand the idea that you now see through them, that you no longer trust them, that they no longer inspire desire, guilt, or longing. So instead of trying to win you over, they try to damage your image. Not always through bold lies. Often it's through insinuation, subtle rewriting of history. And because they used to appear so devoted, others might believe them. This is where your silence needs to be fortified with discernment. You don't need to defend yourself to anyone. You simply need to stay aligned with truth. Over time, the people who matter will see who is who. 10. They try to trigger your old self one last time. When all else fails, when you've held your boundaries, kept your distance, and stayed grounded, the narcissist will often attempt one final maneuver to resurrect your old self. The version of you that overexplained. The version of you that forgave too fast. The version of you that couldn't bear to be misunderstood. This is where they'll say something deeply personal. something only someone close to you would know. A wound, a fear, a past failure, something they once used to gain access to your heart. They say it not to reconnect but to provoke. They want to pull you out of alignment, to shake your emotional peace, to remind you of the version of yourself that would have to respond. This is the trap. Because the moment you react, even if you're defending yourself, they feel a small hit of power. Don't give it to them. Let your silence speak louder than any argument ever could, because now you know the truth. So what does all of this mean? It means the narcissist never had real power over you, only the power you were conditioned to give them. They weren't strong. They weren't invincible. They weren't gods. They were emotionally fragile, dependent on your reactions to maintain their illusion of superiority. And the moment you stopped playing their game, they weren't empowered anymore. They were exposed in their neediness, exposed in their emptiness, exposed in their inability to truly connect without manipulation. If you do this to a narcissist, if you truly detach from needing their validation, stop reacting, and stop rescuing them, they will not just lose control of you. They will become obsessed with reclaiming the version of you that made them feel powerful. They will serve, flatter, stalk, mimic, and even humble themselves, not because they've grown, but because they've fallen apart. And that performance, that servitude, that fake submission, it lasts until they find a new supply, until they believe they can dominate you again, until they grow tired of faking change and go back to their true self. So don't be deceived. Their obedience is not love. Their loyalty is not transformation. Their pursuit is not romantic. It's survival. And you're not the fragile one. You're the one who woke up. You're the one who chose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, freedom over fantasy. That's not just strength. That's power. So take a breath. Look back at the path you've walked. See how far you've come. And remind yourself of this. You didn't win by fighting them. You didn't win by punishing them. You won by returning to yourself. And the moment you did, they became a slave, not to you but to their own illusions. Thank you for watching. If this message resonated with you, please like, comment, and share it with someone who may still be caught in the narcissist web. Subscribe for more insight from the heart of a clinical psychologist who believes in your healing, your wholeness, and your future. Stay wise, stay grounded, and most of all, stay free.